move around on the agenda, waiting for Mr. Metric to appear. So we're going to have to go out of order. Here he is. Dun, 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 dun. That's okay. That's all right. So I think what we would like to do, what I would like to do, is start with the parking piece just quickly, because I did ask Matt to come up with some data, and that's number 3 on the agenda, and the review of the highest enforcement location. So it was just the information we've been looking for. Matt, if you want to hit us with that.
Sure. I don't know what format you'd like this in, but I have some data just to talk about.
Yep.
I could put together. I don't know what this new parking system, we can slice it and dice it any way you'd like. So I just looked at since the beginning of time, and time being first week of March is when we turned on the new parking management system. Looked at a total universe of locations as well as parking violation types. We had a total of just about 3,100 total violations. Of those violations...
You said 3,100?
3,100, 3,100.
Since March 19th.
Since March
Wow.
2019. To be exact, 3,000.
Surprising?
3,091.
And our collection rate is over 80% the goal.
Correct. Of those 3,100 tickets, 60% of them are expired meter, and 29% are exceeded time zone. Those are the 2-hour zones.
Right.
Everything else, there's facing oncoming traffic, no parking anytime, no parking here at the corner, fire marshal, block driveway, on sidewalk, handicap in, crosswalk, load zone, and snow route.
Snow route, right.
The 2 major ones are the expired meter and the 2-hour zones, which is exceeded time zone. And if we look at the total number of tickets based on location, and so we have every single location in the borough block by block, and of those 3,100 tickets, 500 of them have been 200 Haverford meters, 480 municipal lot meters,
Wow.
256 300 Iona, the block of the infamous 300 block of Iona Avenue. It's the only expired meter, or the only 2-hour zone that is in the top 6 of locations. Then it goes 100 Narberth, 100 Forest Ave, which are both metered, and then 100 Essex, which is also metered, sorry, and then 300 Hampton. So it's the 300 Hampton in Iona.
Okay.
That's 149. And then Station Circle, metered, 146, and then South Narberth, 109. That's like the
We're
cutoff.
going to go around. And I just have a
That's the
question.
cutoff of 100, above 100 tickets, and then below that, it falls off pretty rapidly. 70, 64, 53, 39,
Yeah, that's fine.
25. This is total.
Yeah.
And then I did it average per month.
Can you send us this?
Sure. What formats do you want? Do you want like a
Excel?
report? Sure. I can do that.
Yeah.
I can put together a little report on
Perfect.
that, just to show you.
You lost me about 10 data sets ago.
Is there a
again.
time? Is it
Yeah, I mean,
6 o'clock on
sure.
Haverford Avenue? Is it, what? Is it at the 300 block? Is it in the morning?
I can get
Iona,
that.
if it's, you know what I mean?
didn't run that, but the system
Right.
does allow you to, if you look, I'm going to show you the dashboard of the new system. So you have all of these reports that are available anytime you log in, showing locations, and one of them is the lower left, which is time of day.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, just those then.
Yeah.
That's great. We don't
Right.
need Excel if they come.
Right.
Yeah,
Pretty
that's, I'm just
reports
going
already.
to
Right,
print these ones
right.
out.
Okay, that's great.
They'll actually export as images also.
Perfect.
Right.
Let me just run year to date. So you're looking at, here's the histogram
Right.
of the time. Most of them, middle of the day.
I bet the public would be interested in those images as well.
What do you mean by that?
If we posted them to meeting with the minutes from this meeting, I bet you those images would be curious. I bet you folks would want to see what block they're on.
Is that something you'd like in the minutes?
Well, let's Let's go around and see if anybody has any questions and see, what format I think
Could do it.
would work best and speak to Mr. Richard. Mayor Deutsch.
No, it's interesting information. I'd like to take a look at it, and maybe the goal is always to get compliance.
That's right. That's right.
And the goal is not to
Not tickets,
raise
right.
revenue.
No.
So if we can encourage folks to be compliant and just give them a heads up. As to when the most infractions occur, maybe they can be a little more cognizant of their own behavior, just sometimes we all forget, and especially with parking. So let's see if we can do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rob?
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you, Matt. So we can use that data to inform policy choices. I mean, if we want to adjust the meters in some way, in particular spots. I mean, I wonder how fine-grained is the data? Can you look at say the municipal lot by the little gym? Like, can you separate that upper lot from the lower lot?
Well, we have the meter number in there.
Okay.
We could get it by meter number, and it wouldn't be easy to do, but we could do it.
Okay.
We just look at that as the municipal lot. We don't separate it from upper and lower.
Okay.
For the location.
Okay.
And that would be a different location that we'd have to enter. We could do it into the system, but from this point onward, it's just been municipal law.
Okay.
There's no distinction between upper and lower.
Okay.
Ed, anything? Brandon?
No.
Chief?
No.
Matt, I think when I heard your reporting, so of the top 5 areas, kind of hot spots, the only 2-hour zone that is in that hot spot is the 300 block of Iona.
Correct.
And we know what the culprit is there, which is, Chief, I know you have actually, I believe, tried to garner some partnership with the auto body shop.
As a matter of fact, last week I just did a foot patrol and I walked over there at Calvert Collision. I met with the general manager and I told him that we had some re-emerging concerns about some complaints in the 300 block of Iona where people could not park, and the bottlenecking as well in terms of traffic. He assured me that he was going to go out there and he was going to address it. Recently, Matt and I were actually just discussing a situation where we're finding some tickets that are being issued. This scenario has repeated itself before, where dealer tags are being used out there. But I thought, Matt and I did some further research, and I had some tags run through Clean. I thought that there may be a possibility that Caliber Collision was using some of those dealer tags. It turns out to me that further research revealed that Caliber Collision is being used as a third-party vendor, as an auto body shop, from different dealerships around the area in the Philadelphia region that are using Caliber Collision in Northwoods, and they're coming out there with those dealer tags and they're swapping out different cars with different tags. So, I think there's a lot of different issues up there. They seem somewhat responsive, but then again, it falls off the track.
It's temporary.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess my question for that particular block, and not that we're diving into the weeds now, but this seems like a spot that we should talk to Walco, and there's a really unique policy that we need to look at in that space. I mean, it's one of our smaller business districts in that space. I live at the 200 block, and you see, there's an elderly population who goes to Ryan Christopher's, who cannot walk and park.
Right.
The bottleneck.
The businesses aren't, on that other side, aren't happy with what's going on in that block.
The residents are not.
The residents, so I think we have to come up with maybe a deeper discussion and a further discussion, maybe with the whole of council, and come up with some ideas and include Mr.
I don't know what possibility,
I don't know, I always thought meters would work better, but down there, but that's my opinion.
Just to let you know what they've done recently during the past 6 months is they've contracted with 2 private lots in the area to alleviate some stress, one behind Staples and one behind Bob's Auto.
Right.
So-
Right.
which our new developer is probably going to be pretty interested in.
Right, and this is, I had a business down there for 13 years.
Yeah.
And 13 years this has been a problem.
Yeah.
And probably even longer than.
Okay, sorry.
Right. And Caliber's only been there 2 years.
Right, but it's
Right.
always been
Before
an
that-
auto body
Well, it's
shop.
been,
But it's a kind of bigger
right,
operation now.
which just
Yeah.
leads to the paving or not paving in the street behind it, which talks about the fencing, which talks about all the things we've talked about in my time here of what to do with that particular corridor. It leads into sort of some larger pieces. But I think there is a conversation that's got to be had about what we're doing there.
And I'm sorry, last question, not about parking, but even about zoning, just the smell and use of chemicals within an industrial, I mean,
You're
that falls
absolutely
under
right.
public safety as
Yep.
well.
And that's part of the conversation we were hoping to have with that fence issue, the paving issue is to try to move pieces forward to discuss that, what's behind that building and what's appropriate to store there. Absolutely. Mr. Metro.
We have enough information now since we've implemented the system to really understand the geography, timing, and extent and location of parking enforcement. So that's a good watershed moment for us. All I wanted to add to this conversation was a big, huge thank you to the police department, to Andrea, to John for helping the office facilitate sort of these parking management issues, going up and having foot patrols, conversations. It's a big help. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
There you go.
Just
Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
listening to some things that were said
Yep.
about compliance
Right.
and zones. Two things I'd like to plant the seed to talk, just so you can think about. We have really good compliance, meaning people are paying their ticket, but we're not having compliance
That's right.
in that the ticket numbers are going down.
Yeah, right.
And so this is an opportunity for the legislative body to review the price, I'll say it, the price of the ticket. It's still cost effective for people to get a $15 ticket, right?
Right.
So you hear that the
So-
tickets are $15.
$15.
Our neighbors charge at least, I believe it's $25
Right.
in Lower Merion. And so I'm not saying we're on par with them. I'm just saying you're getting a bargain in the borough.
So that's one thing that we need to consider, that if
Right.
we're looking for compliance and people moving and making sure they're not parking their vehicle there, it's still cost effective for them to just pay the $15.
Right.
We need to review the price of fines, as well as not just the parking ticket, but the price that we can define for it going to court. We also have the ability to define that value also. So if you say it's going to be a $20 or
Right.
$25 ticket, but we're going to charge you $75 if it goes to court, that's another, okay, yeah, 15.
To go to court?
15 and
15
15.
and 15. Yeah.
So everything, yeah, okay. Interest of full disclosure, we've got the code project that's close to being finished, right?
You're talking about the North Borough Code.
The entire borough
whole
code.
thing.
The whole
entire thing.
schmagiggy. All right.
Yeah. Since we decided to include the zoning chapter, right now it's existing as a PDF.
Yeah.
We wanted to include the zoning chapter. That's what's taking so long, because they're actually drawing all of those graphics in it.
Wow.
Once that's done, that's going to give us a starting point to look at all of the legislation that we need to update, one of which is parking. Our parking legislation is a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess. It's really difficult
It's
for the
a lot of
judge
piecemeal over
to
time. Yeah,
interpret.
it's really
difficult for our police officers to interpret. And that came to light through this process of rolling out a new parking management system.
right.
Part of the process was to review our legislation, how that relates to the courts and what they were going to review and approve. And it shed a really big light on how dysfunctional and how unorganized our parking legislation is. So that's one of the short-term items that I'd like to do once the code is completed, to redo all of those things.
Yeah.
The second thing, I'd like you to start thinking about 2-hour zones. And the data doesn't lie in that 2-hour zones, most of our 2-hour zones
Yeah. You know how I feel about that.
maybe don't need to be there.
Yeah.
I'll say that one too. I'll say two bad things,
Yeah.
Increase fees, and maybe most of the 2-hour zones don't need to be there. And if we start looking at how we want to implement the parking study and talking about those 2-hour zones, maybe that would be a good thing for council to consider as well. Food for thought.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful, and I agree. And like other pieces of legislation over time have not been exactly reviewed and matching other documents that were put forward. So that we find that everywhere, right? So that's in the trash part. That's it's in like every aspect of over time what's happened, and the cleanup is great. So I really think this is an opportunity to be able to think through a lot of this, and especially since we have the deep data. So thank you very much. And it leads to those larger conversations about the infamous multi 2-hour zones. And I'm not a big fan of the fines, but I see your point. And like you said, if the compliance issue is, it's like 10 years ago, it was $140 to park your car on Temple University campus per month. That was 10 years ago. So you can only imagine what it is now.
$175 a month.
You can only imagine what it is now. Right? So $15 seems like You know, like, that's just peanuts, right?
Some of the comparisons, pardon me, in the study talk about what off-street parking
Yes.
was priced at in some of our large apartment buildings in the borough, and it is a lot higher.
Yes, right. So the next piece is, and this is the 2020 residential permitting plan. And I asked to have that included. I had a conversation with Councilman Weisbord about bringing this, and he'll do it in his committee as well, so you'll hear it again, about where we stand, what we think next actions are, if any, and maybe hear this body, so public safety is involved, obviously, with this part of it in the enforcement issues in the 2-hour zones, as you said. So, Sean, if you have anything you'd like to start with.
Well, what we were focused on, what we're targeting is a rollout January 1, 2020 of just migrating essentially all existing permittees and the residential parking system to our platform,
Right.
our online platform, which would mean that we'd have to get the word out, and persons in the community would have to buy a new permit through our platform, no change in cost, $5 per year. We're still working on some decisions around whether there will be a sticker or not, or no sticker, and that the system will be license plate based. And there is some training that's going to happen with the parking controller to look at methods that are employed to enforce 2-hour zones, and it's going to change the way the parking controller does enforcement. So we'll need John and Andrea's help on that. So this is a least cost move in the sense that it's just, we're not really proposing to change anything about the way we regulate or parking. We're just changing the back end of the management. And I think once we get everyone into the system, maybe after 90 days, maybe by April 1, 2020, we can then have a conversation about what's the universe of our residential parking permittees. Where are they? To Matt's point about the 2-hour zones, maybe there's a 2-hour zone out there that has no violations because it's not enforced, it's not a problem, and guess what? Maybe only half of the residents actually went out and got permits anyway.
Right.
And if that's the case, why do we have that zone?
Right.
I agree.
So that's I'm speculating in one way about one outcome of that, but I think before we make any more changes, the kinds of which I talked about in May, like changes to the price, changes to the geography of the zones that are in the parking study, let's get a good picture of what the universe is. We don't know right now if it's 500 permits, 800 permits,
Right.
1,200 permits. We
Right.
don't know yet.
Right. Okay. All right. Mayor, anything?
Just if and when we go to the changeover, we're going to have to just do our best to make it broad-based, make it accessible to everybody, and we'll have to find a way to help perhaps some of our older residents or people who are not comfortable with technology to help them transition over. We'll have to find multiple ways to.
Yeah, they'll still be able to come into the office.
Okay.
That option will always be there.
Okay. Good.
We will enter it for them, but there's always the opportunity for that.
Just in case they're uncomfortable. There's folks who are still uncomfortable with technology.
And I have met some very tech-savvy 80-somethings.
And it's all right. I didn't mean to generalize. There could be some 30-years or 20-years or whatever.
My mother-in-law's 84-year-old boyfriend unlocks his phone with his eyeballs and... This 51 to be 52-year-old is not always great with technology. So I kind of got it from my own perspective. So.
Rob, anything?
Well, just quickly, so Matt's data shows us that there are very few violations in the 2-hour zone.
In most 2-hour zones, right.
Right, but the second level of data that could come in April would show us how many permits are actually issued within certain zones. So it's another level, so the two sets of data together
Yes, right.
could really give us a basis for deciding how to possibly
Adjust or change. Right.
the 2-hour zone. So that's the...
It's also kind of I look at it too through the lens of it's the least cost change we can make. It's not changing what people are paying. It's not changing the geography of the zones.
Right.
It's not affecting anybody or anything. It's just migrating to a new platform that gives us one for our home.
Maybe that
I'll
would
take
be.
the first one down.
I know, you wouldn't be gone. Fran, anything?
No.
Ed, anything?
Just to dovetail off what Matt was saying about the 2-hour zones. Matt and I met this week about 2-hour zones. I'm in favor of trying to consolidate those zones as much as we possibly can. And for the reason being is we have one parking controller, we do have to work smart instead of hard, because we're going to be taking that license plate reader and we're going to be using that, having that information effective January 1, scan and cross-reference the system for those that are permitted. So if we can eliminate some of those zones, we're going to be concentrated on some of our more serious areas in terms of parking violations.
Right.
So that would help us out tremendously.
So my concern with the 2-hour zones is we are in the next year going to have 4 new apartment complexes, 3 of which are in the center of town. And when we started this discussion in Public Works, we had said we ought to be real clear that when people rent apartments, in particularly those 3 complexes, they know it's 2-hour zones.
Yeah.
So you are either going to move to an apartment without a car, or you're going to understand that you're going to have to feed a meter every half an hour or park, in Acme and walk over. So,
Or park in one of the spaces that our zoning code requires that the builders.
sure, but there's some that it's not 1-for-1.
Close.
So, but it's close.
Yeah,
It's darn
close.
close.
It's close,
Right.
yeah.
But for those folks that have the concern, it's like, oh, well, there's apartments with more than 1 car. Our narrative has always been that we will use policy, particularly the use of 2-hour zones around that area. So neighbors on Forest and Narberth and Windsor.
Right.
So, I obviously want to use the data that we have, but also with the understanding that that is radically going to change in the next year. So we ought to be nimble
Very, very good
and
point.
flexible.
Yeah, no, I think it's just those 2 hours, like, we know that some parts of North Essex have been 2-hour zones forever, and why? There's no cars there. And so it's sort of, we see your point that like where the concentration is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so totally understandable and I talk about adjusting zones versus eliminating zones. So I think adjusting is what we're looking at. Yeah.
It may not radically change either. We have to be open to that possibility too.
True. It might not. Maybe they'll comply.
But in light of the changing circumstances in the borough, that's a
right.
very, very good
It's a
point.
valid point.
And letting
Absolutely.
folks know, like we are saying in all this development and density that we're attracting folks who are using trains, bikes,
Yes,
or
right,
single or no
right.
car.
That's right.
And again, I feel like we don't want to change that once people come in and rent. That we
That's
want to
right.
be
No,
clear
that's
with
right.
Oh, yeah.
if you are not a single car family, a train or bike transportation, this may not be the place for you.
It may not be for you. I agree. Sorry.
Very good.
She's very good. Asking his questions. Is that all we've got on this particular item? Yes? Yes. Okay, so moving on, we will, let's have a quick conversation. What have we got? The Public Safety Department budgets. So, Sean, I assume that's you?
Yeah, we were just starting off the budget process internally. You'll get a schedule next week at our meeting as to budget touch point and dates. Council targeting the October either workshop or business meeting for a draft and published budget. We have to meet internally, talk with Chief of Police, with Director of Public Works, Assistant Manager, Fire Chief, and talk about budget. And we're sending out those budget requests by the end of this week to the library and to the fire company to sort of iron out those issues that you're aware of. So we're getting started. We don't have any, just, an overview.
Yeah.
We're not changing a whole lot from 19 to 20.
Okay.
Same staffing levels, basically. Our police department is fully staffed with officers, chief, parking controller, crossing guards. There's no changes planned in administrative personnel or public works personnel beyond the position we're advertising for now. So fundamentally, we're not making any big changes, but as you know, certain costs are always going up. Insurance being one of them, health, liability. We've got a good number on workers' comp, which is nice. And operationally, we have to discuss things like, do we have enough money in the maintenance budget for this building? Do we have enough money in the maintenance budgets for our parks, for Shade Tree, for all the things that we want to maintain in good order? If you look at our budget versus actual, we're over this year for library maintenance, for 100 Conway maintenance, and we're bumping up against our ceilings on park and shade tree maintenance as well, which is sort of starting to affect some of the decisions that we want and things we want to do with the remaining 3.5 months of this year. So we're putting things on hold because we don't want to overspend. Now, our hands are tied on some of those decisions because we can't delay, for instance, the replacement of a fire service alarm panel in the library building. We just can't put that off to next year if it's not working. So we had to bite the bullet and spend $5,000 to replace that. And we've had other HVAC failures both in the library building and in this building that have really driven those costs
Always
up.
have. Always have.
And you just take those numbers and you smooth them out over as long a period of time as you can to figure out some sort of smooth trend line, understanding that you're going to be under and over that on any particular year. And we're since we've gotten our chart of accounts in our house in order, we're starting to build that business intelligence over time, so that right now we're only working with 2.5 years of good data. So we're starting to understand the variance of those kinds of numbers. That's my elevator speech for budget at the moment, but you'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure.
Thank you. Is Mayor any question?
No question?
Rob?
I know we had a question about crossing guards. I don't know if we want to talk about like the costs of crossing guards,
I don't know.
Or
I think we'll wait for the next discussion so that we have some information in front of us, some numbers in front of us. I mean, I totally hear your point, but it's maybe until we have some paperwork in front of us. I'm not sure. Ed, anything? Fran?
No.
Chief?
No.
Cindy? Sorry, Matt.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, great. It just, percentage-wise of what we're looking at over the total budget, that's really the question I think that Rob and I had. What are the percent? What do we spend on emergency management? What do we spend on the fire department? What do we spend on the police department? What do we spend on, just kind of, not in this moment, but clearly in that data we'll be able to see all of those numbers, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think we have a more foundational conversation we're going to have around emergency management as well.
Right, I think you're right. If there's nothing else on this one, we'll go to, I'm trying to hurry. Let's get the reports in, then we'll talk about the trash. Talk trash. Fran, would you like to go ahead and give us your report?
All right. Relatively busy month, 38 calls. A couple of significant ones. On the 2nd, we assisted on a working house fire at 125 David Road, which is down by West Laurel Hill Cemetery. The house was well involved upon arrival, and there was a juvenile special needs occupant in the basement. He was rescued by fire department personnel, at least one of whom was from Narberth. And the catastrophe was averted. The home was 85 to 90% destroyed. But the individual was rescued, so that was a call you felt good about after it was all over. On the 7th, we had a serious water issue with severe thunderstorms. We had a water rescue up the road. The victim was able to self-extricate, but and I think we talked about this last month, just the fact that we stood by while the worst of the rain was coming down, so we knew we could ensure a response if any other issues, houses struck by lightning or any other flooding issues had arisen. But we have an issue during serious flooding between the members not being able to get to the building to get the trucks out and getting the trucks out while the area is flooding. But that's just something that we deal with every year. And on the 14th, we were at Marion Mercy for a malfunctioning piece of equipment that put a lot of smoke in the building, and that place is a maze in the basement. There's several different basements. So it took a lot of time to find the culprit, turn it off, so that was an intensive operation for the department. We were in service for over 12 hours for the month, and we added 2 firefighters to the active members list, which is always encouraging, and we're always seeking people who are interested. We have 4 or 5 now who are going through training before they are put on the list, and we recruit where we can. In the first week of next month, we'll be having the fire department open house for Fire Prevention Week, so we'll be getting some banners up for that advertise that to the general public. I believe that's on October 9th, so we can advertise that to everyone. We do our little display down here, and people can go over look at the apparatus. They ask any questions that they have, if they have concerns about anything. If they have questions about fire safety in their home, CO, we're getting into the beginning of the heating season, and that is always a time when we're particularly focused on CO calls, because people who do not properly maintain their heating apparatus start it when they get the first cold snap, and if there's an issue, oil burner backfires, they have something obstructing their ventilation of their oil burner or their gas burner or their hot water heater or whatever it may be. And CO is odorless, colorless. If you start to feel like you're sick, if you start to feel like you're getting the flu, if you start to notice your lips turning excessively red, all those are signs of CO poisoning. It's very serious. It can kill you. We've had incidents in the borough of very high, very serious CO. We had one a couple of years ago in North Avenue where it was over 500 parts per million, and that's in the fatality zone. So we would certainly encourage everybody to have a CO detector, at least one, in their home. And as I said, in the fall, when the heating services come back into operation, that's usually our most intensive time, because people who do not maintain their heaters on a yearly basis are always at risk for an issue like that.
I think Mayor Deutsch I'm happy to reiterate that message across the board to.
Not only that, I would love to do some sort of initiative to help people get COs, if we can find a way to get them at cost, or I don't know if there's any.
Yeah, I don't know. I can look into that.
Yeah.
I know during Operation Save a Life, I know those are usually for smoke detectors, and they aren't to be overlooked, obviously.
Right.
But CO is really a serious, a silent killer.
So I would love to work with you on some sort of program to get.
I can talk to some people and find out if there's any kind of. A lot of times Philadelphia will give away. I kind of feel odd about going down and taking free things for a more well-to-do community away from some place where that's just always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, as far as like giving out free smoke detectors or anything out here. Not that I'm against that,
but even if we can buy them at cost,
I don't have any
cost. The important thing is to get them out.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
And just as a last thing, if anyone's interested, we'll be having a very brief 9/11 service tonight, which we have every year on the anniversary. The flag is at half staff, and maybe 10 minutes long, but we always make a effort to mark 7 o'clock. So we always make an effort to mark the tragic anniversary of this day, and that will be at 7 o'clock tonight in front of the firehouse. Any of the I speak, so don't come expecting a Gettysburg Address or anything particularly eloquent. But there's a brief service when we take the flag down, and it's something that a former chief was very adamant about at the time of the incident, that we weren't going to let this day go by any year without at least marking our remembrances. And 3,000 people and 343 members of New York's fire department. I know another 22 have died this year from 9/11 related illnesses, so it's something that is continuing to resonate, and we'll be holding that tonight at 7. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yep.
So 7 o'clock tonight.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question for
Please.
Fran quickly.
Yes.
Fran, you mentioned you have 2 new volunteers and 4 in training. Can you assess at all how, if you've seen any effect on retention or recruitment since that tax benefit?
I think a couple mentioned that they saw something. I don't know specifically. I think it's something we would have to ask them, like what drew your attention to coming down here and deciding. I can tell you it's a wide range of ages. We have someone training right now who is a 15-year-old, and one of the new active members we put on is approximately 60. So you don't have to be 24 in the prime of health, because there's a lot to be done on the fire ground, and not all of it entails going in with a hose line. There's a lot of support work that needs to be done, and anyone in a reasonable age range, I don't want to discriminate against the elderly, but it's not something for octogenarians. But we're willing to work with people, and if they are relatively physically able to perform, there's something they can do to assist.
I was just curious about the tax benefit.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't have any specific information about that.
Anybody else? Chief Gallagher?
Well, Fran stole the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask for a moment of silence in memory of all those people who died 18 years ago, the innocent victims, as well as the first responders, the firefighters and the police officers who lost their lives in that day in Washington, D.C., New York City, obviously, and Pennsylvania, and those who continue to die from 9/11 related illnesses constantly. And I respectfully request a moment of silence for all those. Thank you. And to actually go back to Fran, I would like to congratulate Fran on the job that they did in Lower Merion, which was tremendous. I was listening that day, Fran. What a great job. They saved lives. Them, the police department, obviously, we didn't respond. It wasn't our jurisdiction. But congratulations and thanks to all the volunteer firefighter companies in this community who responded that day and saved a life instead of watching a life perish. It was really incredible to listen to. We were listening, Fran, and I can't thank and recognize them enough because they've done a great job. Thank you, sir. Just to go into our report, things pretty much stay the same. We have our new report that's been disseminated. Personnel-wise, we stay the same. We have 6 full-time sworn employees. Staffing is authorized at 6, 1 chief and 5 officers, 3 non-sworn employees, staffing authorized at 3, 1 parking controller, and 2 school crossing guards. Our fleet is currently, again, fully operational. We are proud of that, here we are almost 18 months later, and the fleet that we started with is now being fully maintained. And the cheapest, vehicle that you have is the one that you currently own. And we're doing a great job. The officers are doing a great job. Our preventive maintenance schedule has kept full service to the community with the vehicles that we currently own. The breakdown is we have 3 uniform vehicles, 1 non-uniform car on the police side. We have 1 parking enforcement car, which is marked and recently decaled within the past year. Our MPO annual certifications stay the same. That has not changed. Our officers have completed first aid, CPR, and AED. Their 2-year certification and their cards have been received. Legal updates and firearms, however, are currently still in progress for the year. The other training certifications are mentioned on the bottom: rifle recert, rapid response, EVOC, which is emergency vehicle operations course, tactics, CIS, as people see that on the report, that is mental health. The officers are all mental health crisis intervention specialists, which is a great advantage to the department and the community. And we have the other trainings that we mentioned that are related to active shooter and the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center. The most important thing that I'd like to recognize today about some of the upcoming training that we currently have is under other training and certifications. our clean 2-year renewal testing approaches for individual officer recertification, which will be for Officer Dan Dutton to start. And then it will move through the other officers as their expirations come and approach. The one thing I would like to recognize is that here we are, a year later, and we sit completely different than we were a year ago, where we had no authorization, no certification for clean. We were revoked for 1 year. And here we are, and we're in a completely different scenario, which is outstanding for our department, and it's a great tool that they need. Our tax officer will be attending clean training, to dovetail off of that, on 924 in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So we're going to be sending our TAC officer up there to actually get updated about clean. We have 2 officers. I'm proud to say that we have 2 officers so far that are trained in criminal investigative techniques and social networking investigation. If we ever get our criminal complaints back, we had 2 that were completed, and now we have our 3rd attending in October. It's a 3-day course. It's excellent. And 2 of those courses that were offered to us at no cost, one was offered at cost, which was in the budget, and we're eventually going to progress through the other officers and make sure that all the officers receive this valuable training. And I'd also like to thank the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center for sponsoring our officers 2 times to do that, which is great. It's an advantage for us. Also, I would like to mention on camera to the public, please, at the beginning of the school year, do not overtake a school bus. You will be ticketed. There will be strict enforcement out there. This year, for the first time, the department is participating in what's known as Operation Safe Stop with PennDOT, sponsored by PennDOT on 1 day each year, which for us will be October 23rd, and that has a lot to do with school bus safety. So we'll be participating in that for the community. That's under Police Community Relations. I implore people, please, by all means, make sure that you are operating your vehicle safely in around school zones to make sure that the children are safe. Next category is equipment. Everything pretty much stays the same. Our computers in our cars, which are referred to as MDTs, mobile data terminals, are fully functional. We have 4 fully functional mobile video recorders in our cars. Our tasers were mentioned before. They're going to be replaced in the fall of 2019. Clean and NCIC is fully operational. The one thing I would like to mention is a big thanks to retiring Corporal Joe McConaughey from the Pennsylvania State Police, who was instrumental last year at this time in restoring and helping us restore our clean certification. He's retired. We congratulate him. We would have not been able to do it without him and his staff. We have a new clean administrator, Corporal Mike Peterson, and a liaison who's identified as Trooper Charles Wood. They will be our new liaisons as we continue this journey into clean training and maintaining our certification. And that's my report.
Thank you. John, I just want to say how important it is that the piece about the buses and participating in that program and making sure that, everybody's kind of aware. We all sort of forget. If your kids are a long time out of school, you forget, that you should stay back from the bus, or you shouldn't go around the bus, or at least sort of somewhat be aware of where the bus stop is close to your home, so that you're not putting yourself or anybody else in jeopardy.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you bringing that up. It's an important piece that has to happen. And we have a lot of kids in the borough of Narberth. 19 kids at the end of my street, and the next block over, I think there's another 13 kids. So it's really important that we have those checks and make sure that everybody's aware of what's happening with the buses.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, are we going around with it?
Yeah.
I just want to thank the chief for your report. I also want to commend, I've seen multiple officer stops within the borough for people who have been going too fast or going through stop signs, and I have seen the actual stops increase lately in the borough, and I want to commend the officers and you and for doing that and keeping everybody safe.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody have a question for Chief Gallagher? No,
Just thank you for the training, the attention to the training,
Yeah.
the professionalization
Yes.
of the police.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
It was a big, so we're going to do this. So please do it now. Okay. Yeah, we're just going to do it now. We're going to have this conversation. It has been brought up here before and was brought up at the larger council meeting, and here it is. The intersection of Price and Conway. And it's a follow-up about the buses and the stop signs.
The bushes. Sorry.
We know that we have had bushes and stop signs, right? We know the bushes were taken care of, I think, earlier in the year, as I remember hearing from our code enforcement person, Kevin, thank you. sorry,
Site
Kevin,
plan
I'm sorry,
assessment.
that some of those issues with large hedges had been addressed. Maybe they need to be addressed again. I haven't been over there, but I think we did have a conversation about whether it was Price and Conway. We have a lot of those traffic chutes, right? So we know it's Windsor, we know it's Woodbine, we know it's Sabine, we know that it's part of Price and Conway, and so that those are chutes that go straight through, right, from one end to the other of the borough, and that particular, especially with the new housing that's there. We did have 3 years ago, have a conversation about whether stop signs should be needed at that particular intersection. And I think that McMahon had given us their best assessment in that moment, but maybe it's time for them to come back and have a look at what's happening there. Sean, you can give us your 2 cents on that.
Yeah, we can have them look at it. It's currently stopped 2 ways, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we talked last time because the bushes, there's no,
Yes.
so by the time
3
you're
out of
pulling
4
out, and I
corners.
had this conversation actually with one of the officers, so I thought last meeting,
3 out of 4 corners.
There
Were
was-
tough, right.
right, that corner house and the bushes were gonna be addressed, which.
They were earlier in the
I questioned.
like May or early June.
Okay, so we may
But-
need to redo that.
Yeah, but we may have, a gentle reminder to everyone, please remember if you live on a corner, Mr. Wegbright, because he was very adamant about bringing this to our attention, that it's very tough to see around corners in the borough when you have a 9-foot hedge on your property that maybe is a little too far over the sidewalk or maybe bleeding into the street, in fact. So to his point is please remember that cars can't see around your hedges. It's better to have them, we understand that you want privacy, we understand the noise, but you've really got to bring it, keep them in check and make sure that they're in good order so that traffic can see, and nobody wants anyone to get hurt at those intersections at all. So thank you, and Mr. Commissioner.
So with that in mind, just to dovetail, we can't be at every corner in the borough at all times. If you, as a member of the public, see a problem hedge or a problem, please go on the borough website and send the borough a note about the particular corner that you see as problematic, and we can have someone check on that.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Anybody have anything else about this particular or any other intersection? No? All right then. We're gonna
Strike that, yes.
Yes.
Forest, and if they could take a look at whether we need another stop sign at the corner of Forest and Windsor. Forest and Windsor, because it's inconsistent.
Yes.
And folks don't know what to do with it.
Right, so we've had that conversation, Sean, but we haven't gone completely to have a full traffic. Matt, you remember we had that conversation with McMahon a couple of years ago about what it would look like to have that full assessment of traffic, where we have this sort of mishmash of stop signs without consistency or a policy or any kind of specifics about why certain corners are 4-way stops and many others are not. So, and maybe those patterns have changed over the years, so that's something that should be looked at as well, right? That we know that we put 4-way stops in places that no longer need them. So that could be part of it too. So whatever your thoughts are, I know that a larger, that traffic study is a lot of money and we're not prepared for it because we have a gigantic piece of infrastructure that's going to cost us everything we have to replace. And it's
Which
going.
one?
The bridge, but we're, 5 years, 3 months, and 13 days, no bridge. So I don't believe that we're ever getting a bridge. But I think that it's nice that we talk about it, but I do not. I did not believe it when I sat down. I don't believe it today.
Aaron did compile a list of,
Yeah.
residents who feel the same.
Yeah.
He has Sean's draft letter and a list of all the elected officials outside of this borough.
Yeah.
So community members can email any of us.
Skepticism is healthy. Critical thinking is a good thing.
All right, so let's look at Forest and Windsor as well. If we could have McMahon give us their best opinion about what to do there.
They are looking at that in
Oh.
part of the Windsor Ave
There you go.
work.
There you go. We have it. All right, let's talk trash just for a hot minute. A few years ago, when Ms. Rickers was in charge of Public Works, there was a conversation regarding the updating of which, to Matt's earlier point, there are several pieces of legislation from the past regarding trash, refuge, unit recycling. There were like 5 or 6 in there, and they don't reflect each other. They don't include each other. It's sort of a mess. And then I think that Mr. Walco had come up with a proposed idea about changing the way we collect refuse and trash and recycling in the borough and put forward an ordinance, which I think most of you have. Talked to Mr. Weisbord about it. He's going to talk about it again in Public Works or infrastructure. And I think because this is the time of the contract, we may want to review that. Otherwise, how long is this contract proposal for?
3 years.
3 years. You won't be able to address it again for another 3 years. There are parts in there that could change the way businesses are collected, and businesses, that's all business, that's just not on that street, not on Haverford, but it's actually about those larger apartment buildings that are considered businesses, right? So if you have 5 or more units, that was sort of addressed in there. I'm happily resend it to everybody, and everyone can take a look. There are, I think, 3 or 4 pieces that need some office work. Maybe you did that. And then there's some pieces to put together timeline-wise and how many containers and that sort of thing for us to hammer out in Mr. Walco's latest version. So just a discussion, because you might not be able to change the issues that you brought up or the many, and thank you, members of the public who have sent me many, many photographs, including residences and businesses who are not aware that you can't put your trash out on the street in the borough of Narberth without a can. You've got to put your trash in a can. You can't just leave bags on the street to be ripped up by vermin or anything else. It's not a great idea. And you must have a lid. Here's a novel idea. Put a lid on it. You've got to do that because you're encouraging vermin. You're encouraging, and it looks like a mess, right? We've all seen those photographs. You have, I have, we all have, and members of the public see it all the time on certain nights where the trash is just out. And we can do better. We live better, we do better. To Fran's point, for a rather well-to-do community, we have a real disconnect on this issue that I think has to be resolved sooner or later. So that's why I'm bringing it up. You'll hear about it again with Mr. Weisbord, and we'll resend that ordinance. We would have to do it in rapid order because the RFP is going to be...
Well, asking for approval from council to advertise it weekend today.
Right.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, does the ordinance address the apartments that are not 5 or more, but we see this problem on Haverford where the apartments above the businesses who use the municipal cans as their household trash?
Yes. So it in the version that is currently out there, it has a piece that relates to ownership, so that the owner of the property and the business have to be in compliance. So that's everyone in that space has to comply.
Space.
Right. So, which gets a little trickier. So there are some things that get tricky, but which is why I think everybody should look at it. And certainly you wouldn't want to, no?
Oh, no, it's
you don't want to?
I am
it's okay.
in favor of the ordinance, but per conversations we've had, it will be a significant change, a significant overhaul of how trash is collected in the borough.
Right.
I say this in caution because we have 2 major things going in parallel now. We have an RFP, or the bid that's set to go out for collection of trash as we know it based upon the universe that's already described. Now we're having discussions about changing that universe.
Right.
It's going to be a difficult thing to pull off because it's going to affect the bid drastically because trash will be collected differently.
Right.
This ordinance, as forwarded to me that I've seen, will only be collecting residential properties.
Right.
Not only just residential, not multifamily residential.
Right.
And it defines multifamily.
Right.
Like it's residents of 3 or more.
Right. But that's just as written. It's not come to the table, there's no proposal, which is why we need your input. And I bring it to your attention in this moment, as I did several months ago, to the Infrastructure Committee, to other committees, and to this committee, to say that it needs our attention because the contract's coming up, and then you are not going to be able to change how trash is picked up under this contract. So the choice is yours. I'm leaving, it's all up to you.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah.
For my sanity, if we get direction from council that yes, this ordinance is the direction that you would like to go forward with, you will need to enact that by December 31st because I then need to craft an updated
Yeah.
bid
Right.
that reflects this ordinance. And this needs to happen
Yesterday.
in a week.
Mhm.
Right.
Is this on the agenda? I mean, because this, all three committees need to weigh in. It branches all of us.
Right.
The RFP was out, the bid was out, ordinance, I don't know, I can't speak
But
to
to your
where.
point, we have to do
It's a
simultaneously.
big, yes.
Are we going to tackle that Wednesday? Is that on the agenda?
No, it's not on the agenda. It's just the first of the conversation, or the second or third conversation we've had regarding this particular ordinance as it is currently written. It doesn't have to go forward as currently written. This body, being a legislative body, can make the changes necessary and needed to the document, propose it, and carry it forward. It doesn't have to be in its current iteration. You have the authority and the ability by vote to change that. So I think that that's what I'm asking you to do, is review it, go through it, see where the impact is, see what you'd like to adjust, and move forward. You have, otherwise, you are headed for another 3-year discussion of not being able to rectify any
Right.
of the trash issues that you have with businesses. So
Okay, good.
that's
So we'll
it.
do that by.
Yeah,
for
just, you
Wednesday.
know,
Well, Wednesday, should ask Aaron or Sean to put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
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 Stop talking about it. Let's
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
because we're going to get jammed up for 3 years.
Right.
I know.
And
I know.
and Bob
I
is
know.
aware as
Yeah, sure.
infrastructure chair.
Yes, Bob is
So-
well aware. We've had a long
Two
shouted
committees,
conversation regarding, as only Bob and I can after all these years. I know. Well, anything else? Oh wait, we do have something else. Mayor Rich
You
and
know
I.
what, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go right ahead. You do.
I didn't bring the sheet.
Oh, we received an email from an organization regarding smoking in our parks and public spaces, and I want to get their name right, so I apologize for not having it in front of me. This is the Young Lungs at Play. It's part of the Clean Air Council's Health Promotion Council. To do by resolution that we as a council would support the idea of urging no use of smoking in our parks, infrastructure, and thereof, any one of our buildings or parks, and that we would post some signs and be able to, by resolution, ban e-cigarettes and those kinds of, not ban, but like discourage the use of tobacco products and e-cigarette usage. On our fields, our recreation fields where the children are playing, I understand all of this. This is not a bad idea. Smoking tobacco products and chewing on them are still legal in the country. So I understand this, and please don't smoke where children are playing or where they're doing their sports activities or anything like that. But I think certainly we'd be happy to send it around if the mayor agrees for those to take a look at in council to see what they think about prohibiting these kinds of things or encouraging folks to stop doing that or thinking twice before they come onto a playing field with cigarettes, as well as with the dogs, Mayor.
Right. Yes. It is a resolution. It's a highly suggested, and it's not just smoking. It's been proven that no amount of secondhand smoke
That's right.
is safe for kids or
That's right.
anybody else. But kids don't
Yeah.
always have a choice. And the other thing is, it's not just smoking. It's any type of it's vaping.
Yes.
It's any type of tobacco product for other reasons as well, because kids emulate what they see.
Sure.
And we want to set good examples, and we don't want them to encourage them to be partaking in unhealthy habits.
And there's a litter piece to this, right? I mean, we still see those,
Absolutely.
right? We
The
see the
butts.
builders, the
Yeah.
butts on the street,
Yeah.
like that's still happening. We see them on the sidewalk. So if you'd like, we'll send that around
I will.
and see what how council members feel about that. If we can have that on the agenda, Mr. Metrick, send that to you as
Right.
well. Yeah, would you like to talk about dogs and parks? And thank you everyone for sending those emails and pictures of our neighbors having their dogs off leash in our parks.
Just sure, of course. It is a reminder to everybody out there, dogs are not allowed in our parks on leash, off leash. They're not permitted, and so we would like folks to follow the rules, follow the law, and please do not keep your dogs in our parks.
Mary Joyce, is that just our parks? Is that like in front of the library or on the lawn at 201 Sabine or on this property?
Well, if it's, if you're walking your dog, there is a leash law, you need to have your dog under control at all times. You need to pick up after your animals.
go.
That is, yes, it's not just the law, it's common courtesy.
Yeah.
Our friends and neighbors live here, nobody wants to walk through,
Dog mess.
feces, so yes, please pick up after your dog. Have your dog under control at all times. Listen, nobody loves dogs more than me. I've built my life around it. These are the responsibilities.
The dog can't pick up after itself.
Right. And until they can, it's our responsibility to pick up after them.
Yes, please pick up. Please pick up, and really, if you're walking your dog near one of our properties, pick up.
Yeah.
Be courteous to your neighbors, be courteous to the kids, everybody who's using the fields and the public spaces. It's really important.
Just because no one sees you doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So if you do get up early in the morning and decide to let them run on our parks, that's not right.
Please don't do that.
Please respect
And to be honest, you think no one's seeing you, but people are sending videos of you. So please don't do that. Please don't do that. Thank you so much. We are called, this ends our meeting, Republic.